Hello, welcome everybody to the June 3rd, 2021 Sustainability Commission meeting. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations from LA County Health Department, the Sustainability Commission meeting will be available to the public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. The meeting can be viewed on local cable, Charter Cable 6, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, or streaming online, https://www.glendaleca.gov/public-meeting-portal. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting these questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person during the Sustainability Commission meeting. And with that, we'll do roll call.
Interim Chair Bartrosouf.
Present.
Commissioner Kartunian.
Present.
Commissioner Khanjan.
Present.
Commissioner Pinkerton. Vice Chair Werner.
Present.
Thank you. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Move on to item 1B, report regarding posting. Oh, yes, thank you.
The agenda for the June 3, 2021 meeting of the Sustainability Commission was posted on May 27, 2021 on the bulletin board outside the City Hall.
Thank you. Move to item 2, approval of the minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right.
Motion to approve.
I actually had a couple of corrections.
Okay.
I mean,
Please.
nothing huge, but under Commissioner comments on the second page, where it says the implementation, it said silverware, but actually the implementation upon request program is for single-use plastic utensils, like for takeout and delivery food service. And then on the following page, about the considerations for having bees in residential areas. That last part for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, bullet number 5, it says 20 feet from public view. It should be 20 feet from public rights of way. That's it. I think, oh wait, actually, no, on the following page. Okay. Sorry, I used to be a professional proofreader. Under item 7, Sustainability Office updates, the last bullet, it said the Sustainability Officer, and it
Oh, yeah.
said in feed or something, and it should be, I think, informed, right? I think it's a typo. So, would you mind amending your motion to say approved as amended?
Yes, approved as amended. Good eye.
Second.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Do we need an official roll call for?
Yes.
Okay. We'll do the roll call.
Commissioner Kartunian.
Yes.
Commissioner Khanjan.
Yes.
Commissioner Pinkerton.
Absent.
Vice Chair Werner.
Present. And
Interim
yes.
Chair Bartrosouf.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Number 3, we have board member or staff comments. Shall we start with staff?
No staff comments at this time, Chair.
I'm sorry?
No staff
Oh,
comments.
okay. Thank you. Any board members have any comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to oral communication. Discussion is limited to items within the jurisdiction of the Sustainability Commission. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Sustainability Commission members may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff for investigation and report. Do we have anybody waiting for oral communications?
Checking. Chair, we don't have any callers on the line.
Okay, thank you very much. There's been a request by staff to move item 6A up before action items on agenda item number 5. If there's no objection, I'd like to do that.
Sure.
Okay.
6A, Department Information Session, Community Services and Parks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Interim Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Onik Bulanikyan, Director of Community Services and Parks. Welcome for your first meeting in the chambers. We're very excited that we're working closely with Mr. Jones and the Sustainability Commission on a number of projects. I want to briefly talk about our department, what we do, and what sustainability programs and goals that we've been working on the last few years. It's a brief presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I do have Coco Panosian on the line, who's our Deputy Director, and he oversees park services and park planning. So he'll be on, and he'll answer any questions that you might have in terms of all of our programs. Got the PowerPoint? So, thank you. So here's our organizational chart. Basically, we have a number of boards and commissions that we work with throughout the year. We have the Parks, Recreation, Community Services Commission, Senior Services Committee, CDBG Advisory Committee, Glendale Parks and Open Space Foundation, Glendale Continuum of Care for our homeless programs, and our Workforce Development Board, and our Glendale Youth Alliance. Our department is split up into 5 sections. First section is our park services and park planning. These are the men and women of our department that maintain our parks, clean our parks, maintain our parks. We also have our park project management team under this section for park development and park rehab. Our Recreation Community Services section, this is our fun section. They handle all of our programs, our special events. We have 4 community centers under our department. We have our Glendale Civic Auditorium, our aquatics, year-round aquatic swimming pool at Pacific Pool, senior meals program, senior services, and also, like I mentioned earlier, special events and youth and family services program. Our central administration section, they handle our grant management, grant administration, and also our department budget. Our human services section, we have 2 sections within this section, 2 units, our CDBG unit, our community development block grant unit, and also our homeless programs unit. We have a number of homeless programs that we implement working with our nonprofit agencies that provide homeless programs within the city. And our workforce development section includes the Verdugo Job Center and also our Glendale Youth Alliance for youth employment programs. Should work. Okay, our motto is basically Parks Make Life Better. As you've noticed, during the pandemic, everything was closed. All of the indoor facilities were closed, but our parks and trails and open space were open. We were busy than ever, people enjoying, recreating, and enjoying our open space facilities and park facilities. We did have our field and park facilities. So parks do make life better. And I want to thank the men and women of our department for providing the service to the residents in Glendale. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life by providing safe, well-maintained parks and public spaces, preserving open space and historic resources, providing services that address the physical, recreation, and social, economic needs of the community, and creating opportunities for renewal, growth, and enrichment. The sustainability efforts that we've are working on and have been working on, we have 5 areas. The first one is water conservation, irrigation, which I will touch upon in the next couple of slides. Field lighting, landscape maintenance equipment, tree planting, and drought-tolerant plant selection. Couple years ago, we went ahead and centralized all of our irrigation controllers. Basically, all of our controllers can be turned on and off automatically with a click of a button. We work with our ISD, finance department, to connect, use our Wi-Fi services, and have all of our irrigation techs basically connected to our controllers citywide. We turn off our irrigation during the rain, and this also avoids us driving around the city and turning our controllers off and on manually. And we are addressing leaks. We get a report of a water flow. We address the water flow within 24 hours. We shut off the valve, the controller automatically, and we'll go ahead and have our staff respond to fix the problem. All of our valves are low flow sprinklers and efficient, and we are continuously researching other products that are on the market that will assist us in saving water. Our field lighting, we have a centralized system. We use Musco system, so all of our field lights are also operated via keypad. We set times for reserved fields. If we see that our fields aren't being used, or we don't have groups that are using their reserved time, we go ahead and turn off those lights. So all of our ball fields are centralized by using the Musco centralized field lighting system. This past year, May of 2020, we went ahead and worked with American Green Zone Alliance, and we made 8 of our facilities green zones. We are operating battery-operated equipment at the following locations: the City Hall campus, Verdugo Adobe, Catalina Verdugo, Heritage Garden, and some of our mini parks, Maryland Avenue Park. We are looking into expanding those green zones to all of our mini parks and small neighborhood parks. We are currently using blowers, mowers that are electric, battery operated, hedgers and trimmers. And we are also working with Toro to see if we can purchase lawnmowers. Right now we have a few lawnmowers that are gas powered. They have our 72-inch blade. We are looking at purchasing larger lawnmower equipment. It's not out on the market, but working with Toro, they're looking into manufacturing larger electric equipment that we can purchase in the next couple of years to mow our fields and our open space areas. We're also looking into electric carts. We currently have 17 utility carts. 5 of them are electric, 12 of them are gas powered. We will be purchasing within the next year or so 5 additional carts and eventually replace most of our gas-powered carts into electric. There are some facilities that cannot handle the gas-powered, the electric yet because of the load-bearing capacity that we need in terms of field maintenance and the uphill that we use in some of our facilities. So we are currently looking at 5 additional electric, and eventually expanding to other park facilities. Coco and his team are working with Public Works and the arborist in the Arbor Day tree planting program. We have identified a number of parks that need additional trees. So we are working with Public Works. I know they are applying for grants. They have received a grant for Arbor Day for 2022, which we will be working with them in planting additional trees. And while working with our CIP section in park renovations, we are working to preserve all of our trees in the park. Here's an example of tree preservation that staff worked on a few weeks ago. This was a sycamore that fell at Verdugo, and we went ahead and, picture shouldn't be there. There it is. We went ahead and mulched the tree, and Coco can talk more about that after the presentation, and if you have any questions. Sustainable projects, like I mentioned earlier, we are looking at drought-tolerant planting in all of our new park renovation projects. We do have a mulching program that we're working on. And back in 2018, on Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission, they adopted our integrated pest management program, which basically banned the use of Roundup and a second-generation coagulant material in our parks. So right now what we use is AgriServe and not organic, basically herbicides and pesticides. So the use of Roundup in any of our parks have not been used since 2018. So I know there have been, emails or comments the last couple of years about the use of Roundup. We do not use Roundup in our facilities. I do want to point that out. Our playgrounds, we have 2 playgrounds that we're working on, Pelanconi and Glen Oaks Park. We'll be going to council this coming Tuesday for them to approve both projects. These playgrounds are manufactured by Game Time, and Game Time is a member of the United States Green Building Council. This is a nonprofit dedicated to expanding sustainable building practices and address environmental concerns. So a large percentage of the material that we'll be using is recycled material. So we're moving forward with this manufacturer for Glen Oaks and Pelanconi, for Pelanconi and Glen Oaks Parks. Our current future sustainability goals, like I mentioned earlier, is working with Game Time and other playground manufacturers to install recycled equipment, install energy efficient LED lighting. We're also working with Glendale Water and Power to install new water fountains that will allow our park users and program users to fill their reusable water bottles. Instead of having plastic water bottles, or single-use plastics have been banned in our facilities. So we're working with Glendale Water and Power to see if they can pay, and we purchase and they pay for the installation for the public to use their reusable bottles and filling them up with the bottle filling stations. Having low-flow sprinklers, continue our drought-tolerant planting, and also we worked with David, Mr. Jones, and his office in bringing LA Composting, a nonprofit organization, to a couple of our facilities so we can have compost workshops And hopefully, we have identified sites. We're working with them to see if we can have a site in South Glendale and North Glendale for composting. And like I mentioned earlier, we are using, we are banning single-use plastics in all of our facilities and also during our city-sponsored events, such as our cruise nights, Cesar Chavez event, and our city events that are sponsored and organized by the city. With that being said, if you have any questions, this was our program in a nutshell. We do have a lot of programs that we're working on. We will be coming back to the commission on a report for artificial turf. We are working with Mr. Jones on a LCA, a life cycle assessment report. We are meeting with a vendor next week to conduct that study and bring that study to the Parks Commission and also the Sustainability Commission.
All right, thank you very much, Alek, for the presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I do. Couple of quick questions, if you don't mind, Onik. You mentioned the battery-operated lawn equipment. You have a pilot project and
Yes.
you're looking at expanding it. I'm curious, any experience, negative, positive, with the equipment that we have? You know, I know other cities, surrounding cities have adopted it. What has been your experience?
I'm going to answer, and then I'll have Coco answer too, because I know he has his staff. He works with his staff on a daily basis. But so far, it has been positive. There has been some concerns in terms of the weight of the battery, the backpacks, and talking to the manufacturer. We're hoping with technology getting better, the backpacks will be reduced in size and less, weigh less. So that's what we're hoping. The only downside is the battery packs are heavy. Luckily, we haven't had any of our employees been injured yet. But in terms of working, lawn mowing, the blowing, it does the work in our smaller facilities. We haven't tried them at our larger facilities such as Verdugo Park, Sports Complex, and Brand Park. But we're hoping with the technology advancing and changing, we have stronger machines, stronger equipment, and also lighter electric
I know
battery packs.
in the area, South Pasadena was one of the first to go all electric.
Yes.
You might want to tap into their experience because they piloted several manufacturers
Yes.
before they went with one. For that program, have you looked into some funding from AQMD? Because I know that they do, as long as you're switching.
Long as we're switching, and they did give us a rebate. Coco, I know Coco has more of the rebate information that we've received through AQMD, and I know there was an email just out today regarding a $50,000 rebate that cities and private companies
Correct.
and residents can get if they want to purchase additional batteries. We are looking at that, but Coco has more of the information in regards to the amount rebate that we
Perfect.
Yeah, if I may, good evening, Commission. My name is Coco Panosian. Mr. Bulitia covered most of the aspects of the program as we have it currently. We do have it at the smaller parks, mini parks, because we're using the handheld equipment, your mower, blower, the hedge trimmer, edgers. At this time, the manufacturer's heavy equipment use that we have in the larger parks, bigger parks, the bigger mowers, as you mentioned earlier, currently they don't have any sustainable equipment that will do the load that we have. However, in the coming years, we will be looking at some options. We already started talking to manufacturers. They do have some smaller mowers, just like the one they use at City of South Pasadena, as the commissioner just mentioned. I'm familiar with the South Pasadena's program. They were one of the first cities to go full green zone in all of their facilities. And their mowers that they use are a little smaller. So in evaluating the smaller size mower versus the larger size mowers and the time it takes to actually complete a job, we're still in the transition phase. So we're hopeful that in the future, we will be experiencing some larger heavy equipment that can benefit us from using it. But yes, the AQMD program, we benefited very largely last time around. We received up to 75% off on the equipment we bought, the battery equipment, as we were trading in the old gas-powered equipment. And as we move forward during the budget cycle, there's in the process right now, if council approves, and next week, the budget, there will be additional funding for us to consider moving small equipment across entire park system. Now, the question you asked about challenges, one of the challenges we have is battery operated equipment do need to have a certain storage, ventilation, and power needs, and we'll be working with Public Works, our friends, to accommodate for some of the infrastructure necessary to accommodate the battery equipment that we need to store at our facility. So we're on the right track. We're very excited. Staff is excited. As Mr. Blinken did say, the battery packs do weigh a little heavier, and the longer you use, especially the bigger facilities, it might start giving us a little more challenges, but we'll be assessing that and making adjustments as necessary.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, as Mr. Panosian had mentioned, the City Council will be, if all goes well next week, we'll be allocating some funds, and I believe it's $350,000 in Measure S funds to expand our American Green Zone Alliance program throughout all of our park facilities.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a question. Yes, I remember reading a Blue Ribbon report that's more than 10 years old now, but they had identified that the city of Glendale is over 800 acres short of parks and open space, given its population, which has since increased. So I was wondering, are there any plans? I didn't see anything in the presentation about adding park space, and I know as a resident of South Glendale, we bear a lot of that shortfall, so I get asked that quite a bit.
Sure, Interim Chair Bartrosouf, members of the commission, absolutely, we're actively looking at a number of facilities in South Glendale to build new parks. I know City Council has allocated funds through Measure S. We are trying to secure Prop 68 funds through the state of California and Measure A funds through LA County. So we are actively looking for new property, at least an acre and a half to build a neighborhood park. We are also we're working with our Public Works Department to see if there are any city-owned property or lots that we can build parks on. This is all in South Glendale. We do have a number of city-owned property in North Glendale that is buildable, but our target location is South Glendale.
Okay, also one other sort of follow-up question. We do have the Adams Square mini park there, and the Adams Hill Neighborhood Association had its board meeting there recently, and because it's outdoors and all this, but we were a little disappointed at how many weeds there were around there. I mean, the lawn, if that was someone's house, they'd be getting a citation, and it just seemed like, I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, they're not servicing the parks as much, but it might be nice if somebody took a tour around and kind of looked and saw, I don't know, someone commented that the lawn would never get like that in North Glendale. I don't know if that's true. I didn't do a study, but there is a perception of a disparity in how the parks are being maintained in South Glendale versus North Glendale, and that's a source of concern.
Sure, we'll look into it.
Thank you.
I'll have staff look into it tomorrow morning, actually.
Onig, if I may?
Sure.
Commissioner, we have actually scheduled, as we even past year, to look at the turf and complete renovation of the turf, removal of what's existing, and refurbishment of the grass there. We had challenges since the inception of the park with the weeds creeping in, and it is scheduled within our program within the next year to be able to remove the turf and put in new sod, and hence be able to maintain us much nicer turf. Now, as far as the park goes, some of the homeowner association members can say we work closely with them in making renovations. As a matter of fact, re-landscaping of the Adams Mini Park idea and the design came from the members of the homeowner association. So we have worked with them in the past 2 years in making several attempts to renovate the landscaping. And the turf is on the list, and it will be coming in the coming year.
Okay, well, that's very good to know. We weren't aware of that. Also, there was some concern, or not concern, some enthusiasm about having butterfly gardens, specifically monarch refuge stations. Has anyone approached you about that?
No, I'm not.
Yes, yes, they have.
A couple years ago, I have to follow up on my emails, but I believe someone from that area had reached out to us. Coco?
Yeah, sorry. Again, Togo Panosian. We did have the community members reach out to us, members of the homeowner association, with some ideas and concepts about recently. This is actually in the past month to start that. And there were some ideas down for Adams Mini as well as up at Duke-Majan. So we've asked them to look into the program of what they want and reach back out to us once they have a full understanding of the program for us to evaluate how we can, if we can make that a possibility at both of those facilities.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments?
I do have a question, actually. I've also heard of rumors or discussions about having green space over the freeway. Is that anything that's feasible or anything that's going to happen in the near future?
Interim Chair Bartrosouf, members of the Commission, Community Development Department, they're working on a study for Space 134, that's the Cap Park. So that's in the planning stages. Not sure if it's going to happen. If it happens, it's going to happen probably in 20, 25 years, depending on funding. Back in 2016, I believe the first phase was budgeted, I believe, at 120, 150 million. But it's in 3 phases. I know the Verdugo Wash project calls for capping part of the Verdugo Wash. Well, the master plan, they're studying the master plan now. And I know there was comments during one of the community meetings is to cap the wash to connect North Glendale and South Glendale. So south of Glen Oaks, you connect the community if you cap the Verdugo Wash. So that's also part of the master plan if it gets included by our consultant. And I know they're actively seeking members to be part of that group. And I know CDD is taking the lead on that.
Great, thank you. And I'm
Chair,
glad you.
we do have 2 callers on this item. How many minutes would you like to give to each caller?
Okay, we can take, we'll do 3 minutes for each caller.
3
I
minutes?
believe one of the callers is Jennifer.
Yes, Ms. Pinkerton.
Commissioner Pinkerton.
Oh, sure,
Give her
sure.
time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Ms. Pinkerton, you're live.
Thank you. Hi, this is Commissioner Pinkerton. I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend in person. Thank you for the very thorough presentation. Just a few comments. I'm pretty sure the single-use plastics ban in the city does not pertain to single bottles of water, bottled water, and I'd like to throw that out as something that we should consider. City of Los Angeles has asked that we look into that also, just banning sale of bottled water on a community-wide basis, but at least also in city facilities and city-sponsored events. So I'm glad you've got a plan coming for bottle filling stations, but I would like to have us look into that. It's a terrible waste of plastic. Let's see. Secondly, just curious, I worked on a couple electric landscaping equipment projects at LADWP many years ago. But the battery-powered equipment is heavier. Then you also have the issue of managing the batteries at the end of their useful life. And I'm wondering, are there corded versions of all the landscaping equipment that you're looking into just to avoid the battery management issue? And also related to electric landscaping equipment, it would be great. I know the city several years ago considered a ban on gas-powered landscaping equipment. But the feasibility of it for gardeners, it sometimes can be more expensive. So I'm wondering if the city could look into possibly collaborating with homeowners groups about getting electric equipment out to the landscapers that are employed by homeowners, just so we can get those devices out of all of our neighborhoods. And that is it. Thank you.
Ms. Unger, you're live.
Hi, yes, thank you. I won't take 3 minutes. I just wanted to make a comment about LA Compost, which I'm familiar with. I've been dropping off food scraps since before the pandemic at the Atwater Village location and currently at their location near Elysian Park. It's a great drop-off site, and I've also used the access to compost there. It's really effective. It's very popular, especially for people who can't or prefer not to do their own composting, like people who live in apartment buildings, like here in South Glendale. So it's a great resource, and I wanted to thank and applaud the staff for working with them. Really excited to see this getting put in place in Glendale as soon as possible. And thank you all very much.
We have
Great.
no more callers.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to the callers. I did have a couple comments. Thanks again for the presentation. And I'm glad you brought up the Verdugo wash. I recommend to my colleagues and to the public to be engaged in that process because we are doing a feasibility study now. And the consultants that we've hired are tasked with doing community outreach. So I encourage anybody that's interested in that project to stay engaged. I do agree with the motto, parks make life better. I've always lived around parks, starting as a kid at Maple Park and then Brand Park and now the very tiny Piedmont Park, which is important for a lot of people that don't have yards and open space to relax in. So I applaud your efforts to focus in South Glendale, and I'm glad that's a target area for the city. I'm also very happy to hear that a lot of the green zone locations are in South Glendale. My hope and suggestion is that as you expand that program, that you do focus in South Glendale. Simply because it is a denser part of the community, more people are affected by not only the noise pollution associated with this equipment, but air pollution. These are lower income communities than North Glendale, and it seems to work well with the feasibility of doing these in the smaller facilities, which most of them are in South Glendale. I had a couple questions about sustainability efforts at the Parks Department. One of the things is reclaimed water. I know reclaimed water is a very specific system within the city, and not all parks have access or direct access to these locations or to the existing pipe network. I know there's recent discussions about expanding reclaimed water to Pelinconi, which I strongly suggest and urge that the city do. Are there some metrics or some kind of goal in the short term to assess any facilities that are in the air that are within the vicinity to expand the reclaimed water program within the department? Or is that something that we can pursue as part of our future climate action plan? Is one question.
That's something that we can pursue as future climate action plan. I know there are a couple projects that we're working on. One being the possibility of bringing in reclaimed water at Fremont Park, Pelinconi. But Coco, do we have any other projects that we're working on with GWP? Because most of our parks are reclaimed water.
Mr. William, currently the two projects that you mentioned are ones that are very adjacent to reclaimed water lines. Being off of Glen Oaks, Pelinconi Park is adjacency with Fremont. So those are a bit more feasible, and we've started discussions with Glendale Water and Power on those sites. And Interim Chair Bartrosouf, as you mentioned, we do have other parks that do not have the same feasibility because the irrigation, the lines itself, the reclaimed lines are not as close. But as we start building new parks or renovating parks, we are preparing for it. So the last park we constructed I'm forgetting which one it was, that we actually identified, we put together two separate lines ready to go. So as long as we're able to bring reclaimed line, the irrigation system is ready to be able to connect to irrigate the reclaimed line. So it's pre-planned already to go as part of our design. And anytime a new park renovation has irrigation in the mix, we are planning for future connection to reclaimed lines. So that's been within our plan. But as far as having a master plan of all the parks and when they can be connected, currently we're only working on the two, the Fremont and the Pelinconi, given their adjacency to a reclaimed main line off of Glen Oaks.
Yeah, but I think putting it in the climate action plan would be good, and then we can start looking at the facilities that need clean water.
Yeah, that would be great, just to have some kind of benchmark. And you know, a lot of the public does not know that a lot of parks use reclaimed water, and I think that's something that we should be celebrating and should include in our documents. The other question that I wanted to ask was related to energy, renewable energy, and lighting. I know that you focus specifically on the field lighting, and I immediately thought of tennis courts. I remember many years ago when I played tennis. I'm forgetting the name of the park up by La Crescenta. You had this cool feature where the user would manually turn a knob and it would turn off after a certain time because nobody's there. I'm curious, are other lighting elements within the parks being converted to LED? Is there, again, as I think ahead to the climate action plan, are we going to have some kind of metric that says by X year, we'll have 100% LEDs within our park system?
As we renovate parks, we are installing LED lights. So we did it at Glorietta Tennis Courts, we did it at Duke Magian, Brand Park. So as we go on renovating the parks, we'll include LED fixtures.
Okay, great. So it's not limited to just the field lighting specifically.
No, it's
all accent lighting and all that.
Entire park, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, I think that's all the questions and comments that I had. Thank you again for the presentation. Thank you, Coco, for participating.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So we will move on to the next item. So we'll go back to action items, number 5. So we'll go to 5A, election of chairperson and vice chairperson. Would somebody like to start this discussion?
So, yes, thank you, Commissioner Bartrosouf. So back in the first meeting, the March 11th meeting, as per the procedures for the Sustainability Commission, the election of the officers took place. At that time, the Commission decided, since you had not had the opportunity to work with each other, you would initially select some interim chairs for a period of a couple of months, and then with the understanding that we would have to select a permanent chair and vice chair going forward. So a couple of questions were raised. If the current interim chair and interim vice chair were to be elected as chairperson and vice chairperson, would the term begin from that original date in March, the one-year term, or would the Commission want that term to begin now if those same people are elected? If a different chair or different vice chair were to be elected tonight, the serving of the one-year term would start now and run through May or June 2022. So that being said, that's all I have on this matter.
Is that part of the discussion to determine the timing of the?
That's up to the Commission how you want to proceed with that. So you can either the pro tem service is included in the year, or the year starts now. So it's up to you. Have that debate amongst yourselves and make a recommendation.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Well, I'm happy continuing on as vice chairperson if you all don't mind, or if someone else would like to speak up, but that would be fine. And I think having it start, well, actually I have a question, like when do most of the offices change? Because I know this is a brand new commission, and it's like, for example, the mayor, I think, was sworn in April, wasn't it? Or so is that when a lot of the boards and commissions also switch office, or is it just all over the place?
Members of the commission, the time frame for the service is set forth in the rules that you adopted pursuant to resolution, and it would be when it was scheduled for appointment. So that would be a one-year term scheduled from the appointment.
And so that's why the question came up. If the interim chair and vice chair were to be selected tonight as the permanent chair and vice chair, that term could run from the time of the initial interim appointment or from today if that selection is made. So we would adjust those rules accordingly. It would just be a one-year term based on when that appointment is made. So yeah, it is a little bit all over the place depending on, the board or commission. But we wouldn't want to deprive, for example, if a new member were to be selected for either of those positions from that opportunity to serve their full one-year term. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, we do have Ms. Pinkerton on the line on this item.
Okay, let's take the call.
Ms. Pinkerton?
While we wait for Jennifer to call back, any other comments?
I would say that if the interim chair and vice chair are turned into the one-year term, whatever, it makes sense to have it go back retroactively to start in March. That would be my preference.
I agree.
Are we waiting for?
Would
Commissioner
anyone like to
Pinkerton?
nominate chairperson and vice chairperson?
I'm going to make a motion to make the interim positions, the permanent positions, starting from when we first started in March.
And I will second that motion.
Okay,
You want to hear from Jennifer first?
yeah.
Yes, if we can.
Do we have her back?
Does she have Zoom option? Okay. She's not being dropped off.
Ms. Pinkerton, you're live?
Yes, thank you. Sorry for that. I got disconnected. Just 2 quick points. I agree with our interim vice chair that I think the 1 year should be retroactive to March, and I had initially called just to confirm that these are 1-year terms. I don't want to see permanent terms because I would like to see members have a chance to rotate through as chair and vice chair, but I agree with making that the 1-year term retroactive to March, and that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor,
And it was seconded.
and
Do we have to move separately for chairperson and vice chairperson?
It's cleaner to do it that way.
Okay.
And we'll do it that way.
Would you like to amend it?
Yes, I'll amend my, original motion to say that the interim chair should be the permanent chair, starting with a term March, retroactively.
And I second that motion.
okay, let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Kartunjan? Commissioner Khanjan?
Yes.
Was the first name mine?
Yes.
Cartoon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes.
Commissioner Pinkerton? Interim Vice Chair Werner?
Yes.
Interim Chair Bartrosouf?
Yes. All right, thank you for your vote of confidence. So let's move on to the second one, motion selecting a vice chairperson.
So same motion as the first one, except instead of the chair, interim chairperson, we're going to say interim vice chair to become the permanent vice chair with a retroactive term starting in March. Does that make?
And I will second.
It wouldn't be a permanent chair, it would be to
Well,
serve
for a
out this
year,
term,
yeah, I think it's-
Correct.
the one-year
This
term.
Yeah,
Serve
as
the term.
opposed to
Just for point of
interim.
clarification.
Right, sure.
Correct.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kartunjan?
Yes.
Commissioner Khanjan?
Yes.
Commissioner Pinkerton? Interim Vice Chair Werner?
Yes.
Chair Bartrosouf?
Yes. All right, Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to 5B, City Pledge to the Race to Zero campaign.
5B, City Pledge to the Race to Zero campaign. 5B1, motion recommending City Council's pledge to participate in the Race to Zero campaign.
Thank you, Chair Bartrosouf, Chair Werner, and the commissioners. I do apologize because you're going to hear from me for 2 presentations. So yeah, forgive me. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Race to Zero campaign. Great, thank you. So in January of this year, City Council asked staff to prepare a report, an information report on the Race to Zero campaign. We presented that report to City Council at the April meeting. At that meeting, City Council directed staff to bring the Race to Zero report back to the Sustainability Commission and asking the Commission to make its recommendations to the City Council regarding whether to join this campaign, what the benefit potentially would be to the city to join this campaign, and also to identify any other similar types of public commitments that may be out there that the Commission may want us to look at or not want us to look at. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what the Race to Zero project is, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after the presentation. So I thought I'd start with a little background, and I'm sure you know this, but so to tackle climate change and its negative impacts, 197 countries adopted the Paris Agreement at the COP21 in Paris on December 2015. And the aim of that was to really focus on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and setting that 2 degrees, that no more than a rise of 2 degrees. So the commitment included agreements from a lot of countries that were there. And when they, at COP21, they agreed that within the 5 years, all the signatories would revisit their commitments and potentially ratchet up their commitment regarding that agreement. So as you know, so as I said, 197 countries participated in that, and it was one of the major global commitments regarding trying to tackle climate change and the need to do so with some urgency. So that program kind of like began then to settle down to nations and how are they going to, from a state point of view, they did that, but then also companies, organizations, and cities also had the opportunity to get involved. So what kind of structures were developed to allow that? So there's and the Race to Zero is one of those structures that has been developed over the last couple of years to allow cities specifically and other organizations to work towards the goals of the Paris Agreement. So one of the kind of leadership groups is the Mayors C4Cities organization. This is a group of megacities around the world who are really committed to delivering on the most ambitious goals of the Paris Agreement. And the C40 Cities Initiative has recognized that smaller cities are unable to join what their group is. So they wanted to be able to provide opportunities for smaller cities to be part of this program. And that's when they came into discussion with the United Nations Framework and Convention on Climate Change to begin to rally leadership and support from not only cities, but universities, institutions, and investors across the globe towards COP26 and the Race to Zero emissions. So this initiative has really picked up. This slide, believe it or not, even though it was made about a month ago, there's now over 700 cities involved in this program. I think over 3,000 businesses now. So as we get towards COP26 in November in Glasgow, a lot more people are beginning to sign up and join and so there is quite a movement behind it. So The objective is to build momentum around the shift to a decarbonized economy ahead of COP26, again, where I said where governments must strengthen their contributions to the Paris Agreement. So why would an organization, a city, or something of join? So it's a public commitment to address equity, climate, economic recovery, and job growth. And the key thing about the Race to Zero is very much focused on science-based targets, which I'll talk about in a little bit in a minute. And it would potentially demonstrate our city's leadership to say that we want to be part of this program moving forward. So there are, if we were to recommend, or if the Sustainability Commission were to recommend to City Council that the mayor of the city does sign up to the Race to Zero, there's like 5 key things. The first is the public endorsement that we recognize that we're in a global climate emergency, that the city will be committed to keeping global heating below the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement, and that we're committed to putting inclusive climate action at the center of our decision making, and that we invite our partners with us as we go through this process. So it's a very public endorsement that is put out there. As part of that public endorsement is a pledge to reach net zero in the mid-2040s or by mid-century at the latest, and limiting warming to 1.5. So as we go forward with developing a climate action plan, for example, if that gets funded, the funding gets approved for that at next week's City Council meeting, any pledges regarding the Race to Zero become part of that planning process as we go forward. One of the key things would be to set an interim target by 2030. So that with that, what they're trying to do is to really push those organizations, those cities that sign up to this pledge, not to keep pushing back to 2040s and 2050s, but to set a realistic target in 2030, which cities would have to take initiatives, and fairly aggressive initiatives potentially, to meet that target. And again, so those would be science-based targets based on the original Paris Agreement in 2015, and they talk about the fair share, the 50% fair share. So what they're trying to do with that is determine, like, certain countries have much more history with generating emissions, so they should actually be responsible for setting tougher targets to help them than countries that are relatively new in their emissions and their greenhouse gas emissions. The next, if we did sign, if a recommendation was made for the city to adopt this, would to immediately proceed to planning at least one inclusive and equitable climate action. And once you pledge to join and you sign up, there is a support network behind that to help you identify potential actions that you can take as an organization to say, right, we're going to start implementing this, and we're going to go forward with that. As I said, there's 50 high impact actions, so they do, as I said, there is a support out there to help. We must complete at least one action prior to COP26. So again, fairly aggressive in terms of trying to get, again, not just for it to be signed and pledged and just stand out there, but for cities to actually make commitments and take and do actions. We have done a number of actions which we could potentially use as our one key action before, to be put in place before November of this year. So the city would be in fairly good shape. Regardless, it wouldn't be too much of a hardship, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then finally, one of the key requirements is begin to publish. So beginning no later than 2022, we'd have to annually report on our progress and what we're doing. And there's a couple of reporting platforms that we could use. One is through ICLEI and one is through the Carbon Disclosure Project. So those are the two reporting platforms that Race to Zero has recommended that cities belong to and sign up to. So, and there is obviously, as you well know, there's lots of different I guess, commitments, pledges cities can sign up to. These are some 3 of the 4 ones that I managed to research, and all of them are directed towards achieving the Paris goals. So I think that's now recognized as the premier goals that need to be achieved as if we really are going to tackle emissions regionally, nationally, and globally. The Paris Agreement allows an avenue for that to happen. So there's a couple of alternatives. The Commission may recommend that the City of Glendale sign up to a different public climate commitment if they think there's one that's more suitable or more preferable for the city. The Commission may recommend that the city does not join the Race to Zero at this time, or the Commission may recommend any other alternative not proposed by staff. So yeah, I'm available for any questions, and I apologize if I went through that a bit too quickly.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments?
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. I'm familiar with the C40 cities. The pledge number 3, the interim 2030 targets. Whose responsibility is that? Who sets that goal? Is it the council? Is it the departments? Because if it's no one's responsibility, then it just falls in the air.
Great question. So by signing up, pledging to be part of the Race to Zero, one of the commitments is to establish that science-based target in 2030.
Okay.
And then as you annually report your progress, you'll be reporting your progress towards that established target. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's no penalty or anything if an organization does not reach that target, but there is incentive through the public disclosure or the public commitment that you're going to achieve it, that you work. Once you do pledge to be part of the program, there is a whole set of supporting documents of how an organization such as the City of Glendale would go about establishing its science-based target. There's different methodologies which can be utilized. Those different methodologies would be based on our previous greenhouse gas inventories that we talked about last time, so 2015, 2009, and 2004. And then there's other methodologies based on population, country of origin, and fair share of greenhouse gas emissions. But if you look at those different methodologies, the science-based target would come out fairly close. There's not like a huge divergence between using different methodologies, but it just gives organizations the opportunity to say, like, how can we effectively do this?
So ultimately, staff, it would fall on their staff to
Correct.
measure and decide which science-based target they should, which is basically the lowest hanging fruit that they should target.
Right.
Okay.
And then it would come also be part of the climate action plan
Correct.
process.
Okay.
So I had a couple of questions. So the part about the fair share is confusing to me, like who decides what Glendale's fair share is? I know you mentioned
So
the population
that
and
is-
things like that.
So that is done on the national scale, and that was written in the original 2015 agreement. So the calculating methodologies are all focused, right? So we'll do the calculation methodologies based in the United States, and that 50% fair share be calculated in. So we wouldn't do it individually as the City of Glendale. It's done on a nation basis. So if we're going to use a calculation methodology in a different part of the world, the fair share calculation would be different. So it's not us as a city. It's done by state, nationally, and so they've done all the work.
Okay. And is that an annual fee or was that a one-time fee to register for that?
So ICLEI is an annual fee. But the Carbon Disclosure Project is free. There's no cost to report to their reporting platform.
And what is the fee for ICLEI?
Sorry?
What is the annual fee?
For ICLEI, that is $2,500. With that, ICLEI does provide a lot of support to cities specifically, especially as cities embark on developing their climate action plans. So as we get a consultant potentially to help us with the climate action plan, we probably would want to partner with ICLEI during that process as well.
Just
So,
to confirm, it's 2,500.
yes.
Okay. Wanted to get the number right.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? I think I'm okay. I'm very interested in moving forward with this, and I'm particularly interested in the short-term, medium-term goals that we'll be setting. So I'm interested to see this move forward. I did want to make a point of clarification. On the slides, you had something about 30 some odd bike lane miles in the city. They're technically not bike lanes, they are bike routes. I would love that the city had 30 miles of bike lanes, but unfortunately we do not. Does somebody want to make a motion or?
Yes, I'd like to move that the city of Glendale join the Race to Zero campaign and partner with ICLEI for their reporting, as a partner in that to take advantage of the reporting tools and advice.
I'll second it. Does anybody have any questions, or should we do a roll call?
Just one question to clarify. When will we do this by? Is there
Well, it's a recommendation to council that they do it in their next meeting, I believe, right?
So I don't know when we'd have to get it onto the council agenda, but it has to be, the pledge has to be done prior to November of this year, because that's when the Glasgow meeting, so that the expectation is that it's done prior to that.
Yes. Yeah, so that's a good point. So I'll say, I move that we recommend to city council that we join the Race to Net Zero before November.
Great, and I'll second that. So let's do a roll call.
Commissioner Kartunjan,
Yes.
Commissioner Khanjan,
yes.
Commissioner Pinkerton, Vice Chair Werner,
Yes.
Chair Bartrosouf.
Yes.
Sorry, Vlad, was there any phone calls?
No, we don't have any phone calls on this.
And also, my first thought was when I saw this Race to Net Zero, I just sort of visualized all these cities like at a starting line, like they're about to take this race. And I've always felt like Glendale's a few paces behind. So I'm so glad that we're taking this step now, because I know it's an aggressive program, but I think we have a lot of ground to make up from our lack of overall sustainable practices in the past. So looking forward to working with council and the community to do outreach and so on, and to work together as a city to make this happen.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 5C, regulation of disposable foodware accessories.
Item 5C, a regulation of disposable foodware accessories. 5C1, motion recommending the city council direct staff prepare an ordinance to regulate the use of disposable foodware accessories.
Thank you, Chair Bartrosouf, Vice Chair Warner, Commissioners. Now you have a fairly short presentation on skip this stuff provision. So as you know, City Council recently passed an ordinance regarding the ban of single-use plastics on city facilities and city-sponsored events. And as part of that process, we were asked to review, including a So skip the stuff provision would require that disposable foodware accessories be provided only upon request. Sorry, thank you, Vlad. So disposable foodware accessories include, but not limited to, utensils, straws, stirrers, condiment packets, splash sticks, cocktail sticks, toothpicks, napkins, wet wipes, cup lids, cup sleeves, and beverage trays. So the provision would apply to food and beverage providers located within the city of Glendale, would also apply to third-party delivery services, online orders, and it would potentially affect dine-in customers, drive-through customers, and take-out customers. So the objective of skip the stuff provision is, to provide foodware accessories only upon request, to reduce unnecessary waste that come with these provisions, reduce the costs, and reduce the use of single-use plastics. In the staff report, quoting from a report a report to the Los Angeles City Council, that especially over the last year during COVID, where everybody's been ordering from home or ordering online to have food delivered at home, the number of accessory items wasted has skyrocketed by an estimated 250 to 300%. And this report also stated that approximately 82% of takeout delivery meals are consumed at home, where people would have knives and forks and so wouldn't necessarily need these items. So there is rationale behind that. So some of the key elements in potentially skip the stuff provision would be, one would be focused around dispensing. So as recommended, no food and beverage provider will provide self-serve disposable foodware accessories dispensers or provide or offer disposable foodware accessories to dining customers, takeout customers, except upon customer request. So there's dispensaries where people can just like take what they need. We'd say we wouldn't want that. And not provide any disposable foodware accessories to drive-through customers, takeout customers, delivery customers without a customer request. So very much focused on, if you want this item, you're going to have to ask for it before the food or beverage provider would provide that. There is, within ordinances that have been written, there is like, if you're going to get trays and you're going to have multiple drinks and everything, obviously there's like safety issues. So, you know, so in certain circumstances, trays and everything, cup lids and everything would be allowed, just so that avoid spillage and everything. Another key provision would be, especially regarding the online ordering and for takeout ordering, for customers to opt in. So if you went online and you did an order, it would be by default, you would not receive those items. You'd have to click, say, yes, you did want those items. So again, very much making it an action of the customer ordering to be able to get those. So, it's just, they're not just given out automatically. Naturally, we'll do a potentially extensive education outreach campaign to the affected food and beverage providers, but also to the community as to why we're doing this and what the benefits of doing this. And council had also, at one point, asked us to do a BYOB education campaign, bring your own bottle and stuff like that. So this will all be rolled up into part of that education campaign. So across the citywide. If we would recommend that if Sustainability Commission does recommend that skip the stuff provision ordinance is done, that we have a three-phase approach. So we'll build up this ordinance quickly. So the first 3 months will be about education. The 3 to 6 months will be based on those larger organizations, those national chains, those facilities with larger employees. And then lastly, everybody else, all other food and beverage providers would be asked to adhere to the potential ordinance. Again, number of alternatives. The Standing Commission may recommend that staff do not prepare an ordinance until the LA County Board of Supervisors recommends a county-wide position on foodware accessories. I do believe that just went to LA County Board of Supervisors last week, and I believe that they may be adopting it in the next week or so. So we may want to see what they're doing and just follow their ordinance. And action 2, alternate 2, is the Standing Commission may recommend staff do not consider implementing ordinance until staff have completed a staff report determining the feasibility of prohibiting the use of polystyrene single-use plastics aimed at food and beverage providers within Glendale city limits. Again, when we passed the original ordinance banning single-use plastics that was focused on city facilities, staff were directed to reach out to the wider community and maybe expanding that ban across the city. And again, the Commission may consider any other alternative not presented by staff. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any callers for this item?
Yes, we do have one caller. How many minutes would you like to give to the caller?
We'll do 3 minutes for the caller.
Thank you. Mr. Juarez, you're on air. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, Commissioners. This is David Juarez. I'm with the California Restaurant Association. I just want to thank staff for the presentation today. I also wanted to mention that we've been working closely with the LA County Board of Supervisors on passing their food accessories upon request ordinance. We work with the City of Alhambra, and they already passed their ordinance, and we're also working very closely with the City of Pasadena. And they are all taking into account how a restaurant operates, right? So their ordinances include, upon request, food accessories, upon the request of the customer, but also it will allow the restaurant worker to offer food accessories, which still gives the customer the ability to either choose to get a utensil or any other accessories or not. And they also are allowing for self-serving dispensers. So any proposed ordinance that the City of Glendale passes or is proposing, we're hoping that it will align with that of LA County, and City of Alhambra, and the City of Pasadena. And the staff member was right. LA County Board of Supervisors will be voting on their food accessory upon request item next Tuesday. It's already on their agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for the call.
Here we have another caller.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Pinkerton, you're live.
Great, thank you. Just a few comments on this. Ideally, we should be coordinating with Los Angeles County, but I work for LA City, and we have not successfully been able to do that yet. The reason it would be wonderful to have one universal ordinance across the entire county is to make compliance with mandates of this type much easier for businesses. But at this point, I don't know that there's much to be gained from waiting for the LA County, staff report, because we already have an ordinance that will be going into effect in Los Angeles. So ideally, I think we should look into setting up a coordinating committee for items of this sort so we can get as many LA County cities on board with having universal ordinances. But at this point, I don't know that it makes I don't see a great benefit to waiting for the LA County ordinance. As far as these slides about the alternatives, I don't think there's any need to wait on voting for the foodware accessories on request ordinance as is. I don't think we need to wait for a ban on polystyrene or single-use plastics. In my mind, a ban is the logical next step after an on-request ordinance, and that's how Los Angeles is proceeding. Just gives retailers more time to comply, to deplete, supplies that they have on hand. So just those two quick comments. And also, though, I do think we need to talk with LA County, because there was a law passed about 2 years ago allowing customers to bring in their own reusable, durable food and beverage containers, and County Health still has not promulgated guidelines about that. And if we could also tell people to bring your own containers, as was mentioned by Mr. Jones, that would be the ideal situation, but we're still waiting for the county rules. So I would like to see Glendale reach out to the county and ask about the status of the rules. It was AB 619, I believe it was CHU from about 2 years ago. And also, I am opposed to having any self-serve containers available to customers. If you have self-serve containers, then you will not have an on-request ordinance that is effective. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
No more callers?
No more calls, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments?
I have a comment. So, yeah, this was something I brought up at another meeting, not realizing how close that LA was to coming up with the same type of ordinance. And I almost brought my giant bag of single-use things that I can't bring myself to throw away. But there was like salt packets and creamers and, in addition to all the plasticware, and those are, little sachets like that are very hard to recycle. And I'm glad that other cities are looking at this. Even, before the pandemic, I was thinking about all that. But it makes sense I'd like to move to recommend that we amend the current polystyrene and plasticware, the city one, to also include the, drive-through, takeout, and for delivery restaurants, and to also try to follow the county guidelines as close as, reasonably feasible, since they seem so close to doing this. I think by the time it gets on the agenda for city council, that will have passed by then and could be something that they could refer to. Because I've seen the other side of it. My grandparents had a restaurant back in the day, so it would be a little onerous to have if you had a chain, the rules are different here than the restaurant down the street and all that kind of thing. So as long as it's not, too difficult, I would think it would be nice to have it be as close to the county as we can get. If that means making it a separate thing from the one that's already in the works, that's fine too.
Yeah, it may be beneficial to have a separate ordinance, since the single-use plastic ordinance is focused on city facilities, city-sponsored events. So I think in terms of cleanliness, I can't think of a better word, to have that ordinance separate, just so we know it's focused on citywide for that specific.
Yeah, I think it'll be easier to, copy and paste from there if it's not wrapped up in the ongoing one that's underway.
Question, point of clarification, if you don't mind. To start with, I think it's pretty low bar. So we're not outright banning it. We're just saying that, people have to initiate the ask. But we're also, dependent on what LA County does. If they set a bar that's higher than what we're, talking about here, we would have to come back and discuss it again, or change our, ordinance. And we're talking, you said Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, LA County's?
I believe that's what the corner said, yes.
I think it would make sense for us to postpone this a month to see where LA County, lands on this, and we can tweak, because that would be the floor, not the ceiling. We could go farther than LA County if we discuss this in a month, or we can say LA County went far enough. We like what they did, and we'll adopt what they have. So my recommendation is going to be to hold off on this item for a month. Hopefully by then, LA County would vote on this, and we could get a report, how the LA County decided on this, and, we'll, deliberate accordingly. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I agree with tabling it for another month because it seems like their vote is imminent. I thought I misunderstood the initial caller. I thought that they had already voted, but if it's imminent, then there's no harm in
I
waiting.
think the caller was from the Restaurant Association, and he was saying that they worked with Alhambra and Pasadena, which have already passed ordinances. And they're, they think that LA County is imminent. LA County has, multiple meetings, so they could, if they missed the Tuesday deadline, they could schedule it again for the next week. So we have an opportunity that we can come back in a month and make a longer lasting decision here instead of a short-term Band-Aid that we would have to come back and tweak.
It's my understanding it went to LA County Board of Supervisors for discussion last week.
Okay.
And then this coming up week, they'll be, I guess, taking a decision on that and voting. So.
It'll also be a more accurate, I
Yeah.
guess, or, yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
Well, I don't mind amending my motion then to change it. I mean, I was thinking of it more as like, we're not voting on the ban itself, we're voting to recommend that, council adopt it, because we don't have the authority to do that, so. And then by then, they would see what that was, but it makes sense to actually have that visibility, so I'm happy to amend my motion to say that we wait until next meeting in July, and after we've had a chance to see what LA is doing, and go from there.
Chair, I have Ms. Pinkerton on the line again.
Okay, let's take her call.
Clarify.
Ms. Pinkerton, you're live.
All right, thank you again. Just want to clarify what I think is a misunderstanding. LA County ordinances only apply to unincorporated areas of the county, so they would not, anything the county adopts would not apply to Glendale. The city of LA already adopted its foodware ordinances, so may I suggest that Mr. Jones provide copies of both the city reports, ordinances, and environmental analysis, and the comparable documents from the county, so we can all have those to look at. But again, County, Jillian, please jump in if I'm incorrect, but LA County ordinances only apply to unincorporated areas. So I just want to make sure everyone understands we don't have to abide by that. But we do have two examples that we can look at now, City of LA and LA County. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I was just thinking more of the consistency for restaurant owners, that they weren't like all over the place, so. But
The
yes,
other
that's
thing
true.
that I know you mentioned that the previous ordinance was for city facilities only. I know that there's right now products out there that are washable and biodegradable at the same time. So for future reference, I would recommend that the city looks at that as well. There's a popular one that even supermarkets like Target carry now. It's called Restore. Something to look at in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't mind the delay in the vote. I think it is beneficial to have consistency or across the jurisdictions. I think it would be also helpful to be able to compare what the city of LA's looks like versus the county versus what we're proposing here in the city of Glendale. My main concern with all this is the phasing of it all. I would like to recommend, unless staff can convince me otherwise, to have a more accelerated phasing approach. I don't think it's appropriate to have to wait 9 months for this to be in full effect in the city of Glendale. So we're already 1 year into the pandemic. A lot of the damage has been done. I don't think we should have to be waiting many more months well into 2022 to see something like this into effect. So we can talk about this at the next meeting when we're taking a formal vote on it, but I would like to see as part of the staff report next month that we have a much more aggressive and accelerated phasing approach. So do we just have a simple motion on the floor to delay the vote to next month?
And also to decouple it from the one that they were already in the works that was specific to city-owned property and polystyrene and all that. So that it can be this more of a standalone and mirror what's going on around us. in other jurisdictions.
You can handle that as a motion, or we've received the direction. So it will be brought back in a month
Yeah.
with the commission's direction. Yeah?
With the request, if you don't mind, by next month, or, as soon as this ordinance passes in LA County, if you don't mind sending us a link, that way we can compare the different versions and we can study it prior to the agenda.
So as part of the agenda packet for the next meeting, we'll make sure that all information is provided to the commission, so you have time and opportunity to review that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I'm happy to second the motion. And with that, we'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Kartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner Khanjan,
Yes.
Commissioner Pinkerton, Vice Chair Werner,
Yes?
Chair Bartrosouf.
Yes. All right, thank you. Let's move on to item 6B, please.
Item 6B, under Reports and Informations, Primer, Rough, and Brown Act.
Yes, good evening, Commissioner Bartrosouf and members of the Sustainability Commission. This is meant to be a high-level primer on the Brown Act. I'm sure many of you are familiar with its provisions, and I understand that you have received some training already that included some Brown Act provisions, as well as some information concerning conflicts of interest and
Ethics
and ethics training. So this doesn't cover that. It's on a fairly high level. I did provide you with a printout of the PowerPoint. You can keep that for reference. I'll be referencing some other useful materials as well. So let us proceed. So as you know, this is all about sunshine and acting in a transparent manner. It's doesn't give our public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on retaining information so that they retain control over the instruments they have created. And that's one of the underlying principles. A great resource that's included is the Open Government, Open and Public publication from the League of California Cities, and I put its reference there. It's free, it's a PDF. So as I mentioned, the Ralph M. Brown Act is California's sunshine law for local government. It's found in the Government Code. It does require these meetings to be conducted in the open and public, subject to certain limited situations, and to keep the public engaged and in control of what it is that we are doing and the decisions that are being made. So what does it apply to? It applies to legislative bodies, to meetings of those legislative bodies, and there are certain exceptions that I'll cover. What is a legislative body? It's very broad. It's not just the city council. It includes boards and commissions, advisory committees, which is what this board is, standing committees comprise less than a quorum, but not temporary committees, such as the committee that this commission set up for purposes of reviewing the applications for the student ex officio members, so long as it's not comprised of it's a quorum of members. So what is a meeting? Let's go a little bit deeper into this. In-person gatherings of a quorum of the members. Communications through an intermediary, so we're talking serial meetings here, and I'll discuss that a little bit more. And that includes what might happen on emails, Facebook, Twitter, or other social media platforms. Serial meetings, they are prohibited. And then I'll be looking at and discussing with you when a gathering is not a Brown Act meeting. So what is a meeting? It's not limited to these face-to-face gatherings that we're fortunate enough tonight to have. And it could be any communication medium through which the majority of the legislative body discusses, deliberates, or takes an action on an item of business outside of a noticed meeting. And those could include meetings held in remote locations by teleconference. I'm going to talk about that a little further as well. And I will mention that just yesterday, Governor Brown did extend the emergency order, which permits cities, counties, legislative bodies around the state of California to continue using virtual meetings for an indefinite period of time. And what I imagine will happen is that given the success that cities have had, that there will ultimately be, or there may ultimately be, some modifications to the Brown Act to permit these virtual meetings to continue, because it has provided a certain level of accessibility that wasn't available before. Let's talk a little bit about this social media issue, which came up in the context of a case from the city of San Jose and some other litigation that recently occurred as well. So this particular assembly bill pertaining to social media is the real first amendment to the Brown Act having to do with social media issues. Essentially, what the Brown Act prohibits a board member from doing is responding directly to any communication on an internet-based social media platform regarding a matter that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body, that is made, posted, or shared by any other member of that legislative body. It's a slippery slope. Someone sees a post by another member, and then another member sees that post, say it's on Facebook or it's on Nextdoor or what have you, and a collective consensus or discussion commences, and that is a violation of the Brown Act. However, we need to be careful here with that slippery slope, because it doesn't preclude the provision of information to the public through these social media platforms. It's just where there's an invitation for comment and posting and discussion that members of legislative bodies need to be careful. And that being said, if there's less than a majority of the board members that are participating, technically it's not a meeting and it wouldn't be a violation of the Brown Act. But still, it is inviting, especially if it's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission members, to want to participate or to comment on a topic that is a hot topic or an emergent topic. And so definitely restraint is necessary under those circumstances. And what does that mean? It's discuss amongst themselves. It's not just, like I said, in-face discussion. It's defined to include making these posts, commenting, or even using emojis. So that is a form of expressing an opinion, right? A thumbs up, a thumbs down, exactly, or to express any reaction whatsoever. Best to take in information or ask questions than to comment under these scenarios. So there are certain tips when it comes to using social media, and that is take caution. Skip a beat before hitting send. Refrain from replying. Do not reply all. Do not take a position or make a commitment. And if there, for example, are reasons that the board needs to be in communication, it's typically for logistical purposes and meeting scheduling and availability and whatnot. That's not precluded, but even that too could end up with a comment, will you be covering X on that agenda? And then there's a comment on that. And so it's best to have there be individual contacts with the sustainability officer in terms of scheduling, rather than to reply all. So that will help ensure compliance with the law. And then there's this distinction between public and private devices, and whether or not your cell phone, your personal cell phone, that you may be texting other members or another member who's a friend of yours, for example. It can come up in any manner of contexts on city-related business within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. This is where things could become slippery. And the City of San Jose case is a California Supreme Court case from 2017, which sort of sent tremors through the entire legislative body community and those of us advising legislative bodies to ensure that, well, how far does this extend? Really, can I be forced to produce things that are on my private telephone? So there were recommendations and discussions about whether or not members of boards should therefore have city-issued or county-issued communication devices to avoid that potential problem. And what the court held in that particular case was that a city employee's writings about public business are not excluded by the California Public Records Act simply because they have been sent, received, or stored on a personal account. So, and it says city employees' writings, but since then it has been understood that that applies to members of boards and commissions that serve cities, counties as legislative bodies. So I wanted you to be aware of that, that context. And it's best not to have those communications if possible. So take caution. So there are exceptions. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'd like to ask a question on
Yeah.
that last slide. So these tips are specific to our communications amongst ourselves, not amongst the public.
Exactly.
Correct.
And the next section I'll get into are the exceptions.
Okay.
So this has to do, and that's one of the reasons why I repeated it, within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, of the legislative body.
Okay,
Right?
so if, say, myself and another member of this commission are in the same book club, and somebody else brings up a topic that could be a subject matter that relates to this commission, you're suggesting that we not make any hint or suggestion at what a position could be on an item that could fall under this commission's jurisdiction?
Yes. That would be the careful conservative approach. Not because, well, let's just put it this way. That third party, it's not a meeting if two of you are in a book club together. That's not a Brown Act controlled meeting. However, that conversation in a position that you might take communicated to a third party who's not aware of the Brown Act regulations that protect the public's, the transparency of the activities of the board, might communicate that to a third commission member and inadvertently create a serial meeting by having conveyed that position or that opinion, and thereby a collective consensus or thought about a particular matter that will come before the legislative body could begin to gel.
So in that scenario, which you're painting so well, who would be in violation of the Brown Act? It wouldn't be person one or person two. Would it be the third party that inadvertently tells the third commissioner?
It would be person one and person two because they're the public official who's the member of the board, the legislative body, and it is their communication of that opinion or position that ended up getting communicated by an intermediary. And I'm going to talk about that because that goes into the exceptions, and it's important to know when can I talk to who about what. So let's talk about that.
Thank you.
Individual contacts are expressly permitted, and that's part of what board members need to do is to have communications with their constituents. So obviously, individual contacts with constituents is expressly permitted under the government code, under the Brown Act. Seminars and conferences, again, even where the majority of the board is in attendance, so long as that conference is open to the public and it's limited to issues that are of general interest to other cities or to the public. So that would be, for example, a League of California Cities meeting that you might be interested in attending, or a Independent Cities Association conference, or American Planning Association conference, things of this nature. That is absolutely permissible, so long as members of the board are not sitting together at a table as a majority discussing issues that are expected to come before them for consideration. Difficult to do, but it can be done. I have been on out-of-town excursions with a majority of the council members, and this pertained to, in fact, the CAP Park and public-private partnership conference that was being offered. Meals were had together. Topics of conversation were limited to the meal, family, what are we doing tomorrow? Did you enjoy that particular seminar? We were very careful to ensure that that conversation did not range in order to avoid a violation of the Brown Act. It can be done. It is inviting because you can see wheels turning that that conversation is not had. So it can be done. So conferences and seminars, yes, majority can go. Open to the public, general interest, so long as city business is not discussed. And then in the same vein, community meetings. Community meetings are definitely meetings that members of boards and commissions want to attend, get invited to attend, and I would think are probably expected to attend to a certain degree, so long as those are open and publicized. And again, so that would be a town hall, a neighborhood meeting, a chamber organized event. It could be a ceremony for the fire department or for the police department. Many of the events are around town. The same admonition. There's no city business being discussed at that event. It's open to the public, or it's generally attended by a large group of people that are there for general interest or for educational purposes.
Question,
Yes.
if I may. What if a commission member is at a conference and meets or has a meal with another either department manager or a council member, not a commission member? Is that a violation?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It would be.
As long as
it
it's
would be a-
outside this body?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It would pertain to the body on which the member sits.
Okay.
So, and not being members of, for example, the Planning Commission or the Public Works Commission or the City Council, that would not be a violation. It's not a violation to meet with staff or with your individual contacts with constituents.
But if I met with a council member and expressed my view, and that council member went and spoke with another commissioner on this commission, we're inviting ourselves to a violation of the Brown Act?
And that is one of the reasons why the City Council and all boards and commissions receive this training, not to convey their opinion to another board or commission member. It's possible that that could happen, but we provide that, that's why we provide that admonition. Yeah.
Thank you.
And further exceptions, attending other legislative bodies of the city or in other jurisdictions. That is permissible under the Brown Act. Ceremonial or social occasions, also a groundbreaking. You may have the majority of the commission members in attendance there. And standing committees, this is an interesting one. Standing committees do need to be Brown Act noticed. And other board members, legislative body members, can attend a standing committee meeting so long as they are there only as observers and they don't sit in their normal location on the dais and they don't appear as participants, but they can attend if just to observe. So that's an interesting tweak. So let's talk about the types of meetings that you might have. Now that we know what violations of meetings are, well, where can this meeting occur? You have regular meetings, special meetings, adjourned meetings, and emergency meetings. Essentially, these have to do with the level of notice that's required. So a regular Brown Act meeting is a 72-hour posted notice. A special meeting would be posted within 24 hours ahead of time. An adjourned meeting is where you indicate that the meeting will be continued to a future date and time. There's no new agenda posting or notice required for that, or an emergency meeting. And that's in particular where the item was not known by the time the meeting was posted on the agenda, and it's an exigent circumstance. It's a health and safety emergency that requires prompt action, and certainly last year that occurred a couple of times after the pandemic took hold, and the City Council did have emergency meetings for purposes of considering emergency orders. Location of meetings. Well, this is where it gets interesting, because we'd have this emergency order that has provided tremendous flexibility for boards and commissions to undertake their business in a virtual setting. And fortunately for us, that will continue. So the exposure to a potential Brown Act violation as a consequence of accessibility to a public setting are significantly diminished because of the flexibility that's provided. And the city has done a very good job over now more than a year of providing that accessibility. We'll continue to do so. To my knowledge, we have received little or no complaints concerning the level of availability, accessibility the public has had to boards and commissions and their ability to participate. So typically, when we're not under an emergency order, the meeting needs to be held within the locational boundary of the city, and with certain exceptions, which I've listed there, unless there's a judicial proceeding, for example. Council members can inspect properties, can attend meetings of other legislative bodies. If it's necessary to meet in compliance with state or federal requirements, or say, for example, outside counsel, there's a required meeting outside of the jurisdiction for purposes of litigation or for closed session, so long as these meetings are noticed. So it can be in other places. Teleconferencing is allowed so long as the majority of the board is within the jurisdiction and typically within the council chamber or the chamber that's designated for the board to hold its meetings. And so long as that individual or individuals, so it could be a maximum of 2 that could teleconference in, are connected by, as listed, phone, video, or both. The location is identified, it's posted and accessible to the public. Those individuals teleconferencing could only vote by roll call, and public participation is required from that remote location. That is, again, when I attended an out-of-town meeting with the City Council, we did post locations for a meeting that we had while they were, these council members were out of town. And so let's talk about these prohibited meetings in a little bit more detail. And it's set forth in the Brown Act itself under that particular code section. So what is it? It's a series of individual contacts or meetings among a majority of the legislative body members through one or more persons acting as intermediaries to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item of business. And we've discussed a few of the scenarios where that might occur. So long as staff here at the city has received training concerning not conveying information received from one board member to another. That can occur in a cocktail hour scenario with a third person, or a book club scenario where that person is unaware and an opinion or position is conveyed to that person and then passed on. It can become more problematic, not so much with staff, although staff could be an inadvertent conduit, but in the context of constituents, developers, or lobbyists who are interested in, frankly, in vote counting. They want to know what the position of a board member is so that they know who to work on, for example. And they want this pre-commitment. There's often a lot of money at stake for a positive vote or a negative vote on a particular project. And we see so many of these ethical violations arise within this context. and conflict of interest violations. So the best advice to give is to state the rules up front. I'm not going to comment on the information that you present to me. I'm happy to receive this information, but I may be asking you questions, but I will not state my position or render an opinion. That no final decision is going to be made until the matter is heard and comes before in the public. And what frequently occurs, and you may have seen this amongst the city council members, is a disclosure. This particular individual, this applicant, did contact me and provide information to me. And I want to assure members of the public that I just received information. These were the questions that I asked. This is the information that was provided back to me, but I did not state my position to them. So that helped to immunize any thought that there was a pre-commitment or a prior position that was being developed before the matter was brought before the board or commission. So that's it. Listen and ask, but do not express opinions. It's the safest route to take. So contact with other members, and we've discussed the scenario just a little bit. What if I run into so-and-so on the street, another board member, and our conversation is overheard even? So it's important to be, that's why I say it's risky business, often the source for illegal serial meeting. And it's important to avoid a quorum or developing a collective consensus outside of the chamber where the matter is to be discussed. So be careful with contacts. Meeting agendas, we have set up a format for how these meetings were run. We adopted a resolution. There are Brown Act rules that govern, what needs to be on that agenda, this brief description, the opportunity for the public to participate, there being the opportunity to provide reasonable limitations, for example, 3 minutes or 5 minutes, 5 minutes for oral communication. There are 2 opportunities for the public to participate. One would be in oral communications. These are items not on the agenda, not open to debate or decision, for example, but also on items that come before the commission. And that's a regular part of the routine that boards and commissions are used to at this point in time. And the exceptions, of course, and we've discussed that, was where there is an emergency, and it's a matter that arose since the agenda was posted, or where there is an adjourned meeting. So this board or commission is not likely to have a need to go into closed session, and there are particular safe harbors that are listed here. It would be for personnel, labor, real property negotiations, or pending or anticipated litigation. It might come up. We don't know, but what's important to remember is that needs to be agendized, and the sustainability officer would work with me to ensure that what's placed on the agenda has the proper description, called the safe harbor description. It has to be verbally announced. If there's action to be reported out, that would be reported out at the conclusion of that meeting. So typically it's announced, recessed. For example, if the city council comes back under new business, it would be reported out at the end of that particular city council meeting after the closed session has been has occurred, and it's confidential. So disclosure is 100% prohibited unless there is a vote to waive the confidentiality, and that would be on majority vote of the board or commission that held the closed session and holds that confidentiality privilege. So last but not least, let's talk about what these violations of the Brown Act might incur. Violations can be prevented by court order. Actions not in compliance may be invalidated or overturned. A petitioner could get court costs and attorney's fees. And there are criminal penalties as well. So let's talk about what could happen civilly. An action could be brought seeking an injunction. That would be the prevention, the nullification of the action. There could be orders determining the validity of rules, or to penalize or discourage the expression of a member. Censure, for example. And it's difficult because there are free speech implications. These are difficult to prove, and there are attorney-client privilege considerations that must be taken. A declaratory injunctive relief to find a past practice was improper and could constitute a Brown Act violation. And cease and desist orders must first come in if a member of the public believes that there has been a Brown Act violation. There is a process they have to go through. They have to send us a cease and desist letter, and the body has an opportunity to cure that violation. So say, for example, it was an improper agenda. Say, for example, there was an improper vote. It could be any variety of things that were procedural that could be cured by going back and reconsidering the matter, rescinding the action, and looking at it again using proper procedure. Criminal liability typically does not attach unless the member intends to deprive the public of information to which the member knows or has reason to know the public is entitled to. So that could come up in the context of the production of documents, for example. And so that's why it is very careful, and we, meaning the City Attorney's Office, we review all of the Public Record Act request responses that are required when a Public Records Act request comes in. And now under the San Jose case, it's very broad, as you know. We have to ask. It's an imposition. And we have to work with our ISD department on records retention policies, and with various departments on retention policies, particularly on California Environmental Quality Act cases. More rules come down not just through the Public Resources Code on what needs to be retained and may be part of an administrative record, but also with regard to emails and everything, frankly, that may be subject to a CEQA challenge, has to be retained until the statute of limitations has expired or there's been a final disposition in a case. How do you do all that? So we are looking at the technology, and we're very grateful for the cloud and the ability to retain documents electronically, to produce them electronically. So while the world of documents that we're required to retain and that we get to ask you about as board members has expanded, the flip side of that is the technologies that allow us to access, retain, retrieve, and produce the required documents has improved as well. So that's all I really want to cover tonight. And I know that most of you are already familiar with that. It doesn't hurt for the public to hear it. It doesn't hurt to have the primer and to provide you with a website address to access this information as necessary. The League of California Cities is constantly publishing information. For example, after the San Jose decision, there's a presentation available online that discussed the ramifications of that, and as well as seriously avoiding the perils and pitfalls of serial meetings of the digital age. Quite a long paper, actually. I went into probably more detail than you wanted to hear tonight as it was, but this particular paper was 20 pages long, single-spaced, a very broad-ranging discussion because of the high level of concern, exactly on point with your questions. Well, how easily could this occur and who's responsible if it does? And so that's why the admonitions stand. Don't express the opinions. This is the form at which the opinions and positions are expressed. So I'm available for questions, and I'm sure questions may come up as we proceed through the commission's tenure, and I'm happy to make myself available at any time to help with resolving those issues under the Brown Act, under conflicts of interest, or ethics matters. Thank you for allowing me to provide that information.
Great, thank you. And that was a very in-depth lesson on what we can and cannot do. So I appreciate you doing that for us, and not only me as somebody who has been on the commission who needed some reminders, but for others who are new to the family. I'm good. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
A request for the chair, if I may. if you don't mind, I'd like to adjourn today's meeting in memory of Steve Zern, who recently left us. But it was a 34-year career with the city of Glendale. Recently retired as well. But I had the pleasure of working with him. So that's it.
Thank you.
That's my request.
Sure. We're not quite ready to adjourn, but I think unless there's objection, I definitely would like to do that at the appropriate time. Okay. Should we move on to the next item?
Item number 7, Sustainability Office updates. 7A, Student ex officio recruitment. 7B, Single-use plastics update. 7C, Department information session, Glendale Water and Power. 7D, Environmental preferable purchasing. Mr. Jones?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and the Commission. So I just wanted to provide the Commission an update and also allow Vice Commissioner Werner and Vice Commissioner Kanjahan to talk about student ex officio. I believe we received 9 applications which were passed on to the subcommittee for them to review, and the commissioners have asked me to set up interviews for next week for the students so that you can interview them and then make recommendations to the Commission.
Yes, Commissioner Kanjan and I did review all the applications, and we're impressed with the quality and quantity of qualifications of the different people, and we felt that since there were only 8 applications that were complete enough to move forward, that we might as well speak with all of them and get to know them a little bit. And since you can't always tell everything on paper, and we also we're planning to do this virtually for about 20 minutes with a little bit of time in between. So we've been working on a list of questions so that we can ask everyone the same question, and then one sort of follow-up question at the end, maybe digging deeper on something that was on their application packet, or maybe responding to one of their responses, something like that. And I developed a scoring metric that we use when we were reviewing the applications, giving different point values to like the essay and the letters of recommendation and so on, so that we could kind of normalize the whole thing. And that seemed to work well. I'm happy to share that for future committees that are doing this. And also, I had mentioned at the previous meeting that we needed to take a look at making the timing a little bit more flexible, because we had that May 15th date in there kind of carved in stone. So I wanted to agendize that, but I'd also like to have that addressed after the 2 students are on the commission, because they may have some feedback on how the process worked from their side, and then maybe we just tweak the process just a little bit since it is a new thing. And that's about it. Is there anything you'd like to add, Commissioner Kanjian?
No, I mean, I think you covered it all. We do want to interview all the candidates. I was very encouraged by seeing that high schoolers and college-age students are very forward-thinking in their approach to the environment, and so I'm looking forward to meeting them by video.
Yes, and there was a lot of diversity and backgrounds and parts of the city. And also, like one applicant's a mother of 2, and so she's recently returned to school. So, that was great. And so we have quite a good mix of both community college students, people who live in Glendale but go to college elsewhere, or who go to high school here in Glendale. So it's going to be a tough choice, or tough 2 choices, but we're ready.
Great. So what's the process look like between now and our next meeting, and are we taking action at the next meeting?
So the commissioners are going to try and set up interviews for next week, so the commissioners will be able to interview the students, and then after the results of their interviews, they'll bring that back to the next commission meeting of the students that they would recommend to be, for the commission to decide as a whole, I believe, the students to be selected, the ex officios to be selected.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for volunteering and taking the time to assist with that. Okay. Should we move on to the next item?
Yeah, so just want to inform the commission that the single-use plastic ordinance has gone into effect at city facilities, city-sponsored events. So staff members are calling the office, wanting to know what they can buy and they cannot buy, and then we're going to start doing an internal education program. So yes, so that has been effective, and we're glad to see that beginning to go forward. Regarding the departmental information session, we're going to invite Glendale Water and Power to present at the next commission meeting. So we're working on that right now. And then Commissioner Warner and Commissioner Pinkerton had asked me to agendize environmental preferential purchasing to come back to the July meeting. I'd like to request that I bring that back to the August meeting. I'm not quite ready to bring that to the July meeting yet. And there's another item that we placed on the agenda that will take a fair bit of discussion at the July meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Do we, if we wanted to ask, since we know and the public knows that GWP will be coming to the next committee meeting or commission meeting, would it be appropriate for us, if we had questions that we'd like answered at the meeting, to send that to you in advance, or should we state it publicly now? What's the preferred option, or what's ideal?
We can gather, and yeah, we should be able to take information if there are questions, and have those posed and have them prepared. So these were questions that came in separately from commissioners that we would like the GWP presentation to address. That's appropriate. So those questions will be both asked and answered in a public forum.
Okay. Asked and answered. Okay, so
In a public, during the presentation. So if they will have the questions ahead of time, that will make their answers more thorough.
got it. Yeah, that's. I'd like to have a more iterative process with these information sessions. So I encourage the commissioners to send in questions if they have them in advance, so we can have a more robust discussion to David, so that we can have a more iterative discussion. I will have questions about very specific things that relate to GWP, so I just want to make sure that they're prepared to answer, and we're not having a situation where they're going to have to report back or look into something and get back to us. I'd like it all done at once. So if commissioners have questions, please relay them to David.
So Chair Bartrosouf, just regarding that, so I would recommend that the commission get their questions in by the 21st, because that gives us time to prepare, to get the questions to Glendale Water and Power, so they have time to prepare it and staff reports, and then, because we have to post the agenda and all the items like 7 days before the meeting. So, no later than that, earlier if possible, please.
Would it help if the Glendale Water Power representative tells us what areas they're going to cover? Because it's a pretty broad presentation. It could be that they're already going to address the concerns that you have. Would it help if they tell us what areas they're going to cover?
I mean, so essentially, potentially break that up into 2 information sessions. You could actually have Glendale Power and then the water,
Right.
and then get them to focus on, because you're right, it's a big organization.
Yeah.
There's a lot of activities that they do and that they're focused on. So maybe that would be beneficial to split them up over 2 information sessions.
Are we amenable to that?
I definitely am. It's 2 separate topics. It's too broad. You know, you could literally talk on each for several days. But it would help, in addition to splitting it, it would help if they tell us, are they gonna come report on, let's say, electricity? Is it integration of clean power, or is it outages, or is it upgrades? I mean, what are some of the topics within electricity that they're gonna cover, or within water that they're gonna cover?
So, as Chair Bartrosouf suggested, so maybe the questions that you provide will be able to guide them in what they want to bring, or what they're going to bring back to the commission. So what you want to hear from them.
Yeah, and I think the general intent with these information sessions is to understand what these respective departments are doing in relation to sustainability efforts. So it'll definitely be within that context, and I think we as commissioners have the ability to help guide what they present to us, and ensure that they have adequate answers to our questions.
Understood.
So should we do power first, then water next?
Sure.
I'd like to suggest that, if that's okay with folks.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's fine.
So we can do power in July. Okay, great. And then you were suggesting on 7D to have that in August, you said? Yes, please. Okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, David, for the updates. Do we have any new business for item number 8?
Chairperson, we don't have any new business under number 8.
Thank you. Any new business or comments from commissioners? Okay, we'll move on to item number 9. Hike, do you want to carry that for us?
Sure. I can, renew it. Just wanted to adjourn today in memory of Steve Zern, a longtime Glendale employee and former general manager of Glendale Water and Power.
Great, thank you. I forget with this one, do we need a roll call for adjournment?
Typically, it's, I move to adjourn in a second, and then, yeah, typically
Okay.
that's what
Second.
you would do.
Okay, great. So we have a second and a motion. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good night.
Take roll call.